You're listening to The Jam here on DZRJ Radio, the voice of the Philippines, 8:10 a.m. on your radio dial. This is LeCain here on Sunday night. We're talking about some of the interesting stories of the week. Let's travel back in time to February 2017. President Duterte signed the Paris Accord on climate change. The accord calls for a reduction in carbon emissions, which has been scientifically linked to the occurrence of natural disasters and extreme weather conditions. Actually, Duterte didn't want to sign the agreement. He called it stupid and unfair. Not because he's against our environmental issues, but because he was worried that in time it would hurt the Philippines economically, and that it would limit industrialization of the Philippines, which is still considered a developing country. Philippines is not considered a major emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, but Duterte signed it and promised to reduce its emissions by 70% by the year 2030. Every country has agreed to this accord, including China, Russia, even North Korea. Countries like Palestine and Israel, who can never agree on anything, both agreed to the accord. The only two countries not agreed are Nicaragua, because they don't believe the richer nations have paid their fair share, and Syria. Syria's just got so many problems of their own right now. Donald Trump has also been a critic of the Paris Accord, but for a vastly different reason. Trump has frequently criticized climate change, calling it non-existent, mythical, and a total con job. The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. Global warming is a total and very expensive hoax. Since taking office, Trump reversed many Obama-era climate policies. He stopped protection of waterways used for coal waste, rolled back fuel standards for cars and trucks, now allows energy companies not to have to disclose payments for foreign governments. He approved the Keystone Oil Pipeline, allowed coal mining on federal lands, permits the oil industry to release more methane, and removed most of the information from climate change from the EPA's website. But none could compare to what he did this week. This past week, he completely pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. He announced it this week during a speech, and he said the U.S. is no longer supporting the Paris Agreement on saving the earth. Ironically, he was standing in the White House Rose Garden when he made the speech. He said, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, that we will start on our own to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair. If we can, that's great. If we can't, that's fine. He said the U.S. is the cleanest and most environmentally friendly country on earth. Oh, that's not true. Actually, I believe it's somewhere around 26th. The president said he is very intent on renegotiating and coming out with a better deal for the American worker. That he said he is the president for Pittsburgh, not the president of Paris. Pittsburgh, of course, is a little town in Pennsylvania. However, the other leaders said there really is no renegotiating. And legally, the U.S. can't really withdraw until November 4th, 2020, which is right around when the next U.S. election will be. He argued the agreement is unfair to America. It has damaged the economy and allows other countries to steal U.S. jobs. This agreement is less about the climate and more about other countries gaining a financial advantage over the United States. Well, that is not exactly true. Many of the biggest players in the U.S. Fortune 500 companies see the Paris Agreement as a good deal for American enterprise. The chairman of General Electric tweeted that he was disappointed with the decision on the Paris Agreement. Climate change is real. Industry must now lead because they can no longer depend on the U.S. government. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook said withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement is bad for the environment, bad for the economy, and it puts our children's future at risk. Many companies already are well into a transition to lower carbon energy, and the global low carbon economy is potentially a 1.4 trillion global business opportunity, which means that Trump's decision is a serious underestimate of American business ingenuity and will be a drag on companies' ability to respond to the new economy of the 21st century. But what this shows, according to the CEO of the World Resources Institute, that even though most U.S. companies are moving toward responsible approaches to greenhouse gas emissions, it sends out a message that the U.S. does not value the environment and cares very little about the risks that climate change may have on the planet. This may prove to just damage America's strategic position in the world and its ability to negotiate on many other issues. So, the U.S. is no longer going to be the world leader on climate change. That leaves other developed countries, such as China, to take over after the exit of the United States. China, interestingly enough, has already emerged as a leader on green energy and technology and is expected to reach the Paris target before the scheduled date. Government officials argue that the Paris Agreement gave China and India an economic leg up on the United States and that their cheap coal puts the U.S. manufacturers at a competitive disadvantage. Trump has been saying that the U.S. is losing to China. He said, "There are people who wish I wouldn't refer to China as our enemy, but that's what they are." Now, I know that Trump believes what he's doing is correct. However, he seems unaware of the possible repercussions on this. This could create huge problems when the U.S. may want to do business with countries overseas. Many of the U.S. partners and allies have become dismayed and even insulted by this move, and competitors and advertisers will likely seize on the decision to expand their influence at the expense of the U.S. These are not things that Trump is apparently worried about, but they may very well affect the ability to work out some major diplomatic deals with other countries from now on. Also, in the agreement developed by countries such as the U.S., they have reaffirmed that they would give $100 billion by 2020 to the Green Climate Fund to assist developing countries with their climate policy. Now, in his speech, Trump not only made it clear that the U.S. is done with this fund, but he also mocked it, saying the so-called Green Climate Fund says it has a nice name, but it's costing the United States a vast fortune. Part of the point of the fund is to help the least developed countries, most at risk of catastrophic global warming trends, such as massive typhoons and flooding. The World Bank estimates climate effects could push 100 million people worldwide into poverty over the next 15 years. Another problem caused by the U.S. pulling out is that other countries may lose their motivation to push hard for emissions reductions. They might be saying that the largest emitter of greenhouse gases is out now, so why should we bother working so hard to follow our commitments? President Macron of France made a short speech in which he said the U.S. pulling out of this agreement was a mistake. He spoke directly to the American people saying, "The world believes in you. I know that you are a great nation." It seemed that Macron understands what this could mean to other countries since the US has pulled out of the Paris Agreement and implored a not so subtle statement, "Make our planet great again." The last 16 years have been the hottest on record. There have been more frequent wildfires and longer periods of drought, as well as an increased number of tropical storms. Basically, the goals of the Paris climate deal are to limit the rise of global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, slash carbon dioxide and other fossil fuel emissions. The US had committed to reduce emissions by 26 to 28% by 2025. It's been proven that if climate warms more than 2 degrees, that the effect will have catastrophic and irreversible effects to the planet. As we have already seen in the past year, climate change has unleashed a disruption on the world's ecosystem and many of the human communities. Global warming is forcing plants and animals and insects to adjust to all these new conditions. Some are able to adapt and are finding a way to stay alive. However, some, like the Great Barrier Reef, are not able to adapt and will never be able to recover. Study after study has shown that the world needs to deal with climate change now, before many of the animals and plants disappear forever. Because there may come a day when the earth just says, enough is enough. And at one point, it may decide to get rid of us too. This is The Jam here on DZRJ Radio, the voice of the Philippines.